Panther people, oh my God, what a day. What's going on? You're watching Panthers Post with Phil Perkins. If you're new here, make sure to pound and keep pounding that like and subscribe button. Also to keep pound those keyboards. Let me know your feelings on this very eventful, or in some cases, uneventful Thursday. Panthers aren't even playing football right now. They're not going to be playing football until August. But we're still talking about them because there are certain people who are talking too much, and there's others in the organization that are not talking at all. So you might be noticing here I'm filming in the evening. That's because, this morning I was just being a dad. And so I missed the Matt Rhule interview with Mac and Bones on WFNZ. Just to put some context in all this, I am in Southern Ontario, Canada. I'm like a 12-hour drive between here and Charlotte, but I still listen to WFNZ in the morning, whether it's live on the way to work. So if it was at 10 a.m., I would have been able to listen to it, I listened to their podcast as well. But I unfortunately missed their interview with Matt Rhule today at 8 a.m. Eastern, and then I listened to it again, and it was like 30 minutes. So I do got to give kudos to Matt Rhule, who I don't believe WFNZ is an official partner with the Carolina Panthers. I don't think they broadcast games. So Matt Rhule doesn't have, like Jerry Jones has his own radio show. You know what I mean? He is not contractually obliged to go on WFNZ and talk for 30 minutes, all right? And the fact that he did that is big on him. And also big on Mac and Bones and their producers to get Matt Rhule in. Matt Rhule has to know that he's in hot water, not just within the organization, but with the fan base as well. Whether it's at a Hornets game or the Panthers game at the bank, he is in some serious hot water after just winning 10 games in his first 2 seasons. It's not just the fact that they've only won 10, but it's just how they've lost those games, and also what seems to be how they are operating off the field. It just seems to be angering a lot of people. This is a guy who just talks nonstop. This is what I do. I literally do it for a living, and I do it for YouTube as well. So this is coming from this guy right here. Matt Rhule needs to talk less. He needs to take a page out of Bill Belichick and be the most boring guy out there. Like Scott Fitterer is a little less talkative than Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule, and I'm putting my hands up in the air. When he first came to the Carolinas, I was completely bought in. But I'm just an average Joe. I'm not a multimillionaire. I've never been a Division I athlete in my life. And so the things that he was spewing out, I was picking up what he was putting down. Absolutely. He is still doing that, though. He's still lecturing. He's still talking his way out of stuff. And that's why I feel like I feel like he wasn't too hard pressed to appear on that interview, because I think Matt Rhule, with the ego that he has, I know the guy, he seems just like a guy who probably thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He probably thought he can sit down with Mac and Bones and talk his way out of the season that was. I feel like every issue that was thrown his way, and shouts to Mac and Bones for not just giving softballs. They were all asking questions that every single fan has been talking about, whether it's in person or on Twitter. And he answered them. And I think we tried to answer them. Matt Rhule probably thought no matter what they threw at him, he probably didn't even have to prepare, that he could just talk his way and weasel his way out of everything. At one point, when we started hearing about, just why the season was the way it was, it just started to sound like excuses, honestly. And, he talked about COVID being an issue. He talked about injuries to Christian McCaffrey. He talked about the offensive line going through, their COVID situations and injuries there. And, it's the National Football League. You're not playing curling. It's a collision sport. Everyone is dealing with this. The Baltimore Ravens were on the cusp of making the playoffs, and they lost almost all their key players, for God's sakes. They had their backup quarterback playing well enough that some people were like, should we be picking up this guy to be our starting quarterback, including the Carolina Panther fans? So this is the Tennessee Titans, all right? So they're going to the playoffs. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. So they broke the NFL record using 91 different players this season due to injuries. 91! That's almost 2 full teams worth of players that they used because they lost key members of that team, including Derrick Henry, who at the moment, as we all remember, was leading the league in rushing and leading the league in talk of talking heads like me of being the MVP of the league. And the fact that they lost him, who is basically their Christian McCaffrey, and still with Ryan Tannehill, who isn't a Pro Bowl style quarterback, he was that reclamation project that many Panther fans thought that maybe Sam Darnold could be, maybe going out on a whim there, because it's not like Ryan Tannehill was lights out in Miami, right? He was on his second team for a reason. But this is Ryan Tannehill, okay? They got Mike Vrabel as their head coach. So, unlike Rhule, played in the NFL, won a Super Bowl in the NFL, one of the winningest franchises of all time, the winningest franchise of all time in the NFL, was a defensive coordinator in the league, and then now a head coach. You got a guy who's been there, done that, and that's the kind of guy who can weather these types of storms. He knows what's going down. He knows when guys go down, next man up, next man up. No freaking excuses. You just give me solutions. Can't fire himself. That's going to be up to David Tepper. But, you know, it looks like that Matt Rhule and company are owning up to their deficiencies. That's a word that Steve Smith used, future Hall of Famer of the Carolina Panthers, saying that, you know, he questioned, do the Panthers know what their deficiencies are? Because opposing teams and opposing players and fans sure do know where these deficiencies lie. And so, as we heard in the last couple of days, they have fired Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach. They've also fired their special teams coach, who's been with the Panthers since before Matt Rhule, and Chase Blackburn, and their defensive line coach as well, and Frank Oakham. Because obviously the offensive line was a huge, huge issue, whether it was a personnel thing or whether it was a coaching thing. Oftentimes we did see the offensive line seem kind of lost and on their skates a lot during a game, so it only makes sense to get a new offensive line coach. Same thing with the defensive line. Was it a personnel thing or was it a scheme thing? Because you did have a Pro Bowler in Brian Burns come out of there and a Pro Bowl snub in Hassan Reddick. So it's not like the defensive line played poorly. I don't know if that's just a personnel thing, because we did hear Scott Fitterer and Matt Rhule say, Scott Fitterer, hopefully the guy who's going to be, you know, calling more of the draft picks this year in Vegas, that this defensive line could get bigger. It could get thicker, could get a bit taller, could get a bit burlier to be up against the run a little bit better. And then special teams, obviously special teams is just an absolute mess. Zane Gonzalez kind of saved the special teams in that sense. When he got injured, it was super unfortunate. But it just seemed like there was not a lot of organization. I remember Chuba Hubbard specifically not knowing who to block at one point. That led to a punt block touchdown for the opposition. So I think it was time to get in some new blood. The Panthers are already looking for some interim or some replacements on the special teams, so that's good. Here are some of the highlights that people are talking about, and then Matt Rhule is getting absolutely roasted by this, and is his assessment of Rashawn Slater, the Northwestern left tackle who eventually got drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers, having a Pro Bowl year, and Matt Rhule, who was an offensive line coach assistant with the New York Giants, all right? So he kind of knows it, and he did play, he's a walk-on at Penn State, but he knows, he should think he knows football, and before he got picked up by the Carolina Panthers, one thing that Matt Rhule kind of always scheme for was they look for athletic freaks. They look for, you know, tall, big, strong guys who could play multiple positions, versatility. And so he told Mac and Bone today, trying to cover his butt and saying that Rashawn Slater just wasn't the ideal size for a left tackle. They thought that he could most likely be a guard, and they don't see themselves picking a guard that high in the first round with the 8th overall pick. Well, that goes in the face of what Scott Fitterer said a day before when he was asked to reanalyze Brady Christensen after Matt Rhule said, and there was a controversy about his arm length. And then Scott Fitterer himself said, Scott Fitterer, who's been in the league as a scout for 20 freaking years, won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks, said, well, you know, if you can make up for the fact that you have short arms by just better body positioning, better hand placement, better feet placement, foot quickness, positioning, stuff like that, and just knowing the playbook as well, that can make up for these, you know, physical deficiencies. So that right there makes you think, man, I really hope, because judging by the criticism that Matt Rhule is getting from offensive line gurus, from college football analysts, who are saying that Matt Rhule has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And these are professionals. These are not fans. These are people who have no connection to the Carolina Panthers, but they have a full connection to the game of football, especially in the scouting department, saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about. But the biggest thing that I still take from this, and it's getting kind of annoying, guys. It's getting annoying. It's the coddling of Sam Darnold, a guy who wasn't drafted by the Carolina Panthers, didn't play at Penn State, didn't play at UCLA where Scott Fitterer went and played football and baseball. He's a guy that they picked up as one of Scott Fitterer's first moves before the draft as the general manager for the Panthers. But the excuses this guy's getting, as if he hasn't played in the league for half a decade now, is wild. Sure, he's turning 25, but doesn't mean that those previous 4 years mean nothing. It's not like he was on the bench the whole time and just watching, holding the clipboard, he was starting NFL games. You would think in those moments you're going to learn something. Even if you went through a couple coaches and you went through a couple coordinators, you're going to be all mixed up and all that stuff. There are some other things you're going to learn from the league. How to deal with pressure, how to deal with putting out fires when you're in the pocket. But guess what? You're also not putting him in a great situation. That's the other thing. Matt Rhule said that they put kind of Sam Darnold with this quarterback draft class. And he said that they ranked him higher than Justin Fields and Mac Jones. Justin Fields is, I think, 22 years old. Mac Jones is 23 years old. And Sam Darnold is 24 and turning 25 in June. And they ranked Sam Darnold with that group. I mean, if he was in this draft at 24 years old, you would expect him to be ready to freaking play. And one thing Matt Rhule said about comparing Sam Darnold with Mac and Justin Fields is that he said, Mac Jones is in a great situation with the New England Patriots. They had half their team sit out last year because of COVID. And from what I understand, the New England Patriots playbook eats and spits out seasoned pros, whether it's Chad Ochocinco, whether it's Reggie Wayne, guys who just cannot handle that playbook. It takes a special person to take that playbook, right? So it's a good situation if you're smart, if you're good at what you're doing. So Mac Jones, yes, he went to a good situation, but clearly he has the mindset and the competitiveness and the drive to tackle that playbook and thrive in that situation, okay? A lot of people can go in that situation and not do great, okay? And then Justin Fields, he says, is in not a great situation. He's going to be on his second coach and second coordinator, second GM in his second year. Well, what do you think Sam Darnold is going to be doing right now? So he's going to be on his third offensive coordinator because Joe Brady's out. Jeff Nixon's probably not going to retain that job. So he's going to be on his third offensive coordinator in 2 years with the team. He's going to have a brand new O-line coach. He's going to have brand new special teams, brand new D-line coach. Will he have Christian McCaffrey next year? We will see. Scott Fitterer did end his press conference yesterday talking about whether he would actually trade Christian McCaffrey. And then Scott Fitterer did say to the media that, as a general manager, he has to listen to everything. And he says it doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to act on it. He said, sure, if you come to him with a crazy, crazy deal for Christian McCaffrey, he has to take the call. But at this moment, it's always a time frame wording. At this moment, we are not looking to trade Christian McCaffrey. This moment, in January. Just wait till they get to the combine. And they're all just kind of hobnobbing. They're all going to that steakhouse in Indianapolis that I wish to go to one day. They're all just hanging out in the press boxes, talking, shooting the shit. You better believe someone's going to mention Christian McCaffrey in some way in some kind of trade. Then maybe, 4 months from now, Scott Fitterer could be listening a little bit more attentively. Calling him young and making excuses is just wild. Okay, so if he's young and you're going to give him excuses, he sounds like a project to me. So the best thing he can do is do what a normal rookie should be doing, a la Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers when they're rookies, is sit the F down and let a veteran take the reins as the number one quarterback for this team. Let Sam Darnold learn by watching, okay? That's what the preseason's for. That's what practice is for. That's what blowout wins or losses are for, where you put that guy in. The offensive line and defensive line are going to be the focus of this offseason. Now, they can be, remember, caveat to everything I'm saying right now and everything that they say between now and the draft, it is lying season. Everyone is going to be lying. They're going to say DJ Moore is a foundational player. They're going to say Christian McCaffrey is a foundational player. They're going to say Jay-Z was a foundational player. But if something crazy comes on, as Scott Fitterer says, they will act on it. Don't listen to anything they say. Just take it with a grain of salt. Let me know in the comments how you felt about the interview. It was 30 minutes long. It's a good listen. And it's kind of like talking to a politician. And this is what politicians do. You ask a politician one question, and then they will go on and on and on and on. They'll answer your question, but before they do that, they're going to talk forever and ever about other stuff. Excuse. Oh, and here's your answer. And so I would have appreciated if they just cut them off and counter a little bit more on those subjects. But besides that, kudos to Mac and Bones and WFNZ for getting coach. One person who is not talking at all is the owner of the team, Dave Tepper, who has only owned this team for 4 years, and each one of them has been in a losing season. In what may have been the lowest of the low of the seasons that he has been the owner of the Panthers, has said nothing. Nothing in the press, no scrums around him at a golf course, nothing. No camera has found him outside his house or at Walgreens, and when they're asking him, hey, anything about the team? Nothing. Not even a statement. Nothing from Twitter. No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because all the other owners are letting their fans know, we're not down with this. Like John Mara and Steve Tesh, the owners of the New York Giants, they let Joe Judge go after 2 years. And because they felt they did not think that they were going to get what they thought they were going to get from Joe Judge, so they may as well just cut their losses and bounce. And then when you got coaches that are out there, like Flores or Jim Caldwell or Doug Peterson, who are or Eric Bieniemy out there right now for the taking. They're free for the taking. You act now. Let me know how your feelings are about what you're hearing from the offensive coordinator interview process. Let me know how you felt about the WFNZ interview. And how do you feel about not hearing from David Tepper whatsoever? Comment community, like, subscribe. See you guys Sunday, Tuesday. We'll see. Talk to you guys soon.